Hey guys, Hidden Truths here. Welcome to this new video with a bunch of new stories. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subscribers and I think we can do it with your help. So please subscribe. It would honestly mean a lot to me. Now, let's get right into the stories.
It began with the sound of the building sighing. You know the one, a deep, structural groan from the belly of old steel, concrete, and wire. Then the fluorescent hallway lights flickered twice and died, taking with them the gentle hum of the elevators and the faint buzz from a dozen cracked phone chargers. Somewhere above me, someone yelled. Below, an alarm chirped and then gave up, as if exhausted by the dark. That's how you know a real blackout. Not from the lights going out, but the sudden quiet. I clicked my flashlight on. The backup systems in the lobby had already kicked in, casting an eerie green sheen across the security desk and the half-empty candy jar that Ms. Albrecht refilled every Monday. I made a sweep down the stairwell, dropping glow sticks on each landing like breadcrumbs. Residents were already trickling out with candles and concerned expressions, murmuring about the heat. August in a riverfront city does something unnatural to the air, thickens it, charges it with a kind of pressure that settles behind your teeth. I helped a woman on the 6th floor bring water to her mother. Made sure the kids on 10 had batteries for their little lanterns. It's what I do. Fix things in the dark. When I finally returned to the apartment I share with Lila, I was damp with sweat, my shirt clinging in the wrong places. She'd lit candles along the windowsill. It made the room look like a cave that believed in romance. She handed me a towel without speaking, like we'd already argued or were about to. I wasn't sure which. The silence between us wasn't new. Not hostile, but practiced. Lately, our conversations had turned into furniture we moved around the apartment, necessary, functional, and mostly avoided when possible. I sat on the couch, towel draped around my shoulders, staring out at the black river while Lila wandered to the kitchen. She poured something into two mismatched mugs. No sound but the splash of liquid and the hiss of match to wick. Then she joined me, knees barely touching mine. Could be hours, she murmured. Could be all night, I replied. We sipped in silence. When the streetlights didn't return after 10 minutes, Lila muttered, Wi-Fi's out, obviously, and leaned over to swipe her phone. Dead. Mine wasn't much better, 10% and dropping. She stood and padded off toward the bedroom. A moment later, what's the password to your laptop again? I told her. She was still somewhere in the back when I cracked open my own machine, mostly out of habit. Battery at 24%. No network. No distractions. Just files. Old ones. I clicked through folders I hadn't opened in years. And there it was. The archive. A full export of a forum that no longer existed. Back when I wrote anonymously under the handle Northbridge. It had been a lifeline once, before the repairs, before the routines and the slow erosion of need. I hadn't planned to keep it forever, but something about the blackout made me curious. Or maybe vulnerable. My first post was dated 5 years ago, titled, How do you rebuild something that only halfway broke? I read the replies, a small ocean of digital strangers weighing in. One name kept popping up, Muse at 2 a.m. Always lowercase. Always signed with a single M dash. You don't have to light the whole city, just one window at a time. I'd forgotten how much that meant to me once. I scrolled deeper, past long nights of desperate honesty dressed up in poetic code. Past the stories I told that weren't quite lies but weren't truth either. And then, pinned near the end, was a private message. I must have saved it by accident, or on purpose, long ago. From Muse at 2 a.m. Subject, something I never posted. It was long. Raw. Full of splintered metaphors about boats without rudders and houses with locked doors. One paragraph described the hollow way a voice can echo in a shared apartment when love turns into shape rather than sound. Another stopped me cold. It read, "I used to tell my sister that relationships were just long conversations interrupted by sleep. I believed that. Until mine stopped speaking." I reread it 3 times, then stared at the screen. Because that line, wasn't from the forum. It was from Lila. From the first week we met. We were sitting on a curb outside a jazz bar that smelled like old lemons and spilled gin. She'd said it like a punchline, dry and effortless. It stayed with me. I looked toward the bedroom. The glow of her phone screen lit her face in that way that makes someone look like they're already leaving. Or maybe arriving somewhere else entirely. I whispered, "Lila." She looked up. But I didn't ask. I closed the laptop. The roof had always been off limits, technically. But on blackout nights, rules become less sacred. Someone had propped the stairwell door with a shoe, and I heard voices drifting down before I even reached the top step, soft laughter, bottles clinking, the telltale flutter of rooftop humanity emerging like moths into candleless air. I brought up 2 battery lanterns and a jug of filtered water from the maintenance closet. It was the sort of thing that makes people nod at you like you're useful. Safe. Predictable. Lila was already up there. She leaned against the edge of the brick parapet, hair loose from the humidity, ankles crossed like she had no intention of leaving soon. She was talking to someone I didn't know, a man in cargo shorts with a chipped tooth and a laugh that rode just above the rest of the noise. The light from a dozen tea candles in jars made everything look golden and false. I didn't approach her. Instead, I handed a lantern to Mrs. Chen from 3B, who patted my arm and said I was a guardian of the night, like she meant it as both compliment and ancient myth. I nodded at people, sipped warm water, and felt the collective weight of summer pressing into our skin. Every breeze felt like a blessing withheld. We were all sweating slightly, which blurred everyone's outlines, made us look like ghosts or memories. I watched a kid draw hearts on the dusty rooftop with a finger and then erase them with his heel. Someone had a harmonica but didn't know how to play it. A couple danced without music. People told stories with nothing to record them. I listened. One woman talked about the '03 blackout and how she'd met her husband over spilled wine and a stuck subway car. Another swore the stars were clearer tonight, even though the sky was more haze than heaven. Lila laughed at something, and my eyes found her before I could stop them. She wasn't touching the man beside her. But the closeness between them didn't need contact. Not jealousy, I told myself. Not quite. It wasn't the person that bothered me, it was access. The ease with which he spoke, the way she tilted her chin. I remembered when I used to be the one she leaned toward like that. The way her laughter used to be mine to protect. I ducked away before I could stare too long. Back inside, I climbed down the stairs, each step a little harder than the last. When I reached our apartment, it was darker than I'd left it. Only one candle now. I sat at the table, let the silence build until it felt like a second spine pressing against mine. And then, I opened the laptop again. Battery at 12%. I navigated back to the archive folder. Not to the messages. Just the drafts. The things I never posted. The sentences I wrote in fits of midnight need and then abandoned. There were dozens, half-thoughts, angry poems, observations I never meant for daylight. But one draft caught my eye. It was dated almost exactly 1 year ago. Title, "If the lights go out, will we finally tell the truth?" I clicked it open. The words felt familiar and foreign. A version of myself both too honest and not honest enough. We talk better in the dark. I think that's the secret. When the lights are off, we don't have to look at each other's eyes, just listen. Just breathe the same stale air and hope we're still synced enough to recognize the rhythm of home. I keep waiting for the storm that never comes. The loud fight, the tearful goodbye. But all we've built is a quiet erosion. We are a pair of strong swimmers who forgot they were treading different rivers. I keep the peace like a mechanic. Wrench, patch, duct tape. Silence is my grease. But I wonder, if the lights went out, if we sat there with only our voices, would we finally say what we've both pretended not to notice? My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I didn't remember writing those last lines. But they sounded exactly like me. Or like a version of me I'd locked behind boiler room doors and maintenance logs. Behind me, the apartment door opened. I closed the laptop, slow. Lila stepped in, barefoot, carrying a glass bottle of something that clinked when she set it down. I told them you'd had enough rooftop mingling for one night, she said softly. I smiled, but it didn't quite reach. She sat opposite me, just like she had earlier. The candle between us was sputtering now, its wax spilling slowly over the ceramic dish we used for keys. She looked tired. Not from the blackout, but from the weight of holding something. I waited. She rubbed her hands together once and exhaled like a confession. I need to talk. I studied her face in the candlelight. Lila's mouth was slightly parted, the way it always was when she had too many thoughts and not enough air between them. Her hands were clasped in front of her like she was bracing for impact. I didn't speak. I just nodded once. Enough to say, go ahead. I won't stop you. She inhaled through her nose. Slow. Careful. Like she was stepping barefoot across glass. It's nothing, physical, she began. Her voice was even, deliberate, the kind of calm people practice when they're trying to keep something from shaking loose. But it's still, not nothing. I didn't flinch, but I felt it, like a heat behind my eyes, a pulse against my ribs. Not nothing is a terrible kind of something. I've been writing to someone, she said. Not in real life. Not like a guy I met. It's anonymous. Online. Was. I don't even know if they're still real. Or active. It started with a post I found last winter, about long relationships, and how love can calcify if you're not careful. I blinked. Calcify, I repeated, more to the room than to her. She nodded. Yeah. It hit me. Too hard. I was going through this stretch of, not talking. Not us, just, me. I didn't know how to tell you what was wrong without making it worse. And I didn't want to hurt you by saying it out loud. She looked down at her hands. So I responded. Just once. On a burner. I didn't even think they'd write back. I could feel my heartbeat in my neck. In my wrists. It was like my whole body had become a drum. But they did, she continued. And not in a flirty way. Not in a let's meet way. They just, got it. The numbness. The static. They replied like they'd been holding the same breath I was holding. And suddenly, I wasn't alone in it anymore. The room was still. The candle crackled once, soft and sinister. And it became this, ritual, she said. Midnight check-ins. Half poems. Paragraphs we didn't send anyone else. Like a space carved out for the parts of me I didn't know how to show you anymore. And I hated how much I needed it. My voice came out low, rough. You ever tell him about me? Her eyes lifted. Yes. Always. It wasn't about pretending I was single. It was about saying things out loud that I hadn't said in years. About us. About how scared I was that we'd stopped seeing each other. I swallowed hard. The taste in my mouth was coppery, metallic. My jaw clenched on its own. And yet, I didn't explode. Didn't throw the candle or accuse or walk out. Because that would have been easier. Because rage is loud and clean, and what I was feeling was muddy. A quiet grief shaped like recognition. I fix things. That's what I do. When the boiler leaks or the circuit's fried, I get my hands dirty. I pry, patch, adjust. But this wasn't a pipe I could tighten. This was erosion. Rot beneath the wallpaper. A house still standing but soft underneath. I should have come to you, she said. I know that. I do. But I was scared you wouldn't hear me. Not really. I closed my eyes. And then I told her something I hadn't told anyone. I used to write, I said. On an old forum. Years ago. Not about you. Not at first. But then things started slipping between us, and I didn't know how to say what I was feeling without sounding like I wanted to leave. I opened my laptop. 9% battery. I turned the screen to her. This is from the archive, I said. My old posts. I haven't looked at them in a long time. Not until tonight. Lila leaned forward, scanning the lines of one of the drafts. Her finger stopped on a sentence near the top. We only talk in safe weather. Never during storms. I looked at her. She looked back. I read that, she whispered. What? Months ago, she said. On the forum. That post. I remember that line. I wrote a reply but deleted it. It felt too familiar. She turned the screen. Scrolled. Clicked into the cached message from Muse at 2 a.m. She began to read. I watched her face shift, eyebrows twitching, lips parting, a tremor in her throat. Then she whispered a line. A very specific line. We were a river that forgot how to bend with each other. I didn't breathe. Because that line, that exact phrase, was buried in a message I got years ago. From her. Before we ever met. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Lila just stared at the laptop, eyes tracing words that had been sleeping in the dark for years. I watched her in the flickering light, trying to gauge the shape of what was happening between us. There was disbelief in her silence. But something else too. A strange, heavy familiarity. She reached out, slow, and turned the screen further. Scroll up, she whispered. I did. She leaned in closer. There, she said, tapping the touchpad. That's mine. The post she pointed to was from Muse at 2 a.m., dated almost 8 years ago. The tone was quiet but charged, like every line was holding its breath. I remembered reading it at 2 in the morning, parked in the old boiler room downstairs, with the red glow of the pilot light bouncing off the concrete. Back then, it hit me like lightning. It still did. I don't believe love dies. I think it just retreats sometimes, folds itself into a crawlspace and waits for someone to come looking with a flashlight. Lila was watching me now. I wrote that the week my dad died, she said. It was the first thing I'd posted on the forum. I didn't expect anyone to respond. But you did. She turned the screen back to me. I clicked open the reply. It was mine. Dated 3 hours after her post. You don't sound lost. Just misplaced. Someone's going to find you in the dark and recognize the shape of your silence. Her eyes shone now. I saved that line in an old notebook. I copied it by hand and read it for a month straight. I never knew who you were. But I think I loved you a little, even then. I leaned back, stunned. I hadn't connected the dots until now, not fully. The phrasing, the rhythm, the weather references. How Muse always described the city in fragments I recognized. But it wasn't just familiarity. It was home. Lila and I had met the next spring. At a hardware store, of all places. She was helping her sister move apartments and needed screws for a broken dresser drawer. We joked about the absurdity of needing 12 types of nails for what amounted to holding wood together. I remember thinking she looked like someone I'd dreamed once. Now I knew why. Some part of me had. Why didn't we realize? I said, voice raw. Why didn't we know it was each other? She shook her head slowly. We were careful. Too careful. You never used your real name. I didn't post after we started dating. I was afraid you'd find my old stuff and think I was too much. I laughed, bitter and breathless. I was too much. Or maybe not enough. Either way, we buried parts of ourselves in different corners of the internet instead of saying it to each other. We sat there with it. The weight of recognition. The slow, excruciating irony of two people who'd once written love letters to each other in total anonymity, only to forget how to speak once we were face to face. I stood. Went to the hallway closet. Pulled down the fireproof box I hadn't opened in years. Inside, beneath old lease agreements and a sealed envelope I never mailed to my brother, was a black notebook with frayed corners and a half-melted elastic band. I opened it to a dog-eared page. Scrawled in my handwriting were phrases, dozens of them. Lines Muse at 2 a.m. had posted. Words that had stitched themselves into me. I flipped to the middle. Read aloud, I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of what I stop saying when I can't see your face. Lila whispered, I wrote that. I flipped again. She beat me to it. Quietly, carefully, she said, I don't want to be understood all the time. Just not abandoned when I don't make sense. I looked up. She was crying now, hands over her mouth. We were each other, I said. First before we met. Then again, when things got quiet. We went back to that place without knowing. And the worst part, she whispered, isn't that I wrote to someone else. It's that I didn't know how to be that honest with you anymore. I nodded slowly. My throat was tight, my chest hollow. And the worst part for me, is realizing I didn't either. The candle flickered. The power still hadn't come back. But something shifted in the silence. The kind of shift you only feel when something fragile stops pretending it's whole. We weren't healed. But we weren't hiding anymore. I didn't sleep. Neither did she. We lay in the kind of silence that feels newly born, delicate, charged, uncertain. Our backs weren't turned, but we weren't tangled either. There's a kind of closeness that forms after rupture, when the truth's finally laid bare and you're left to decide, do I stay? At some point, a fan across the hall kicked on. Then the soft whir of a refrigerator. A streetlight buzzed to life outside our window. The power had returned. But we didn't move. Not right away. It wasn't until the morning had fully ripened, light sliding in over the windowsill, catching on the half-burned wax and the keyboard where I'd left the laptop open, that Lila shifted beside me. We can't go back, she said quietly. Not to how we were. I nodded. I don't want to. We sat up together, slowly, like we were still wearing what the night had cost us. I've been thinking, I said. If we want to stay together, really stay, we have to stop doing this thing where we repair symptoms instead of the structure. Lila looked at me, eyes tired but open. What would that even look like? I swung my legs over the edge of the bed. Rules. Plain language. Like we're building something on purpose this time, not just reacting. She reached for her notebook, the one I hadn't seen in years. The cover was worn. She flipped to a blank page and looked at me like we were about to sign a pact. All right, she said. Start. I cleared my throat. Weekly honesty hour. Phones off. No TV. We sit and say the stuff we've been pocketing all week. Big or small. She scribbled it down. Okay. Dinner. No screens. No background noise. Just food and us. We remember what it means to taste and to talk. She added it. We get one emotional pause card each, I continued. If a conversation's getting twisted, either of us can call a timeout. No punishment, no stonewalling. Just, Space to breathe before we weaponize something we didn't mean to. Lila stopped writing for a second. Looked at me. You've been thinking about this. For a long time, I admitted. I just didn't know how to ask for it without sounding like I was preparing for a breakup. She smiled faintly. I think I was scared of the same thing. We sat there, notebooks and coffee between us, the city coming back to life outside. Traffic returned. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone 2 floors down was already playing music too loud for this hour. Life, loud and messy and unavoidable. I stood, stretched, and walked to the electrical panel in the hallway. Ran my thumb along the breaker lever like it was a prayer wheel. I remembered flipping this switch 100 times before, quietly, alone, while Lila slept or showered or existed in a parallel orbit I couldn't reach. But this time, I paused. She was behind me. I turned slightly. I don't want to be the ghost who fixes problems without speaking. Not anymore. Lila didn't say anything. Just stepped forward, reached past me, and placed something in my hand. Her old notebook. The one she used to carry everywhere, the one she hadn't opened, she said, in years. The paper was thin and curled from time. The ink on the cover was faded. Inside were pages filled with her thoughts. Her voice. Her fragments. And at the very back, on the final page, a line written in her careful, slanted script. Some lights don't come back on, they were never wired. I looked up, my chest tight. But, she whispered, we learned to build the circuit. My hand found the breaker lever. I pulled it. The lights hummed. So did we.